So as we log into Photoshop and we open the application, we get the file menu up top. We have the create new, or we can open up other files that we've already created. You can drag and drop an image to open it up, things like that. But we'll just do the create new button. We have, just like Illustrator and InDesign, we have like some presets here where if we want to start off with like a photo size, a print size, art and illustration, web, mobile, any of those things we can start with. A letter size is 8.5 by 11. This is the measurement units, so inches. Sometimes you want to start with pixels if you want. If I choose anything with web or mobile or anything like that, film, video, it's always going to go into the pixel version instead of inches. But when you're in print, it's going to select inches because that's how the measurement of the pages and paper is for US. Resolution, 300 is always the highest quality of, considered a high quality document, so 300 or higher. For this purpose, we'll just put 150. Now this is the medium quality for like drafts or anything you want to print in class. But the higher number you put for resolution, the higher the file size is going to be. Okay. And then for this, I'm just going to do, I'm going to change the orientation. So instead of 8.5 by 11 portrait, I'm going to do landscape. You also have an artboards feature, which means more than one artboard inside the same document, right? So you have almost like different pages within the same document. The background color can be white, it can be black, or you can change the color based off of what color you choose. All right, so I'm going to just keep it at white. RGB or CMYK. If my intent is to print this out, I want to start off with CMYK. Okay. If you know that you're going to stay within web, mobile, film, video, maybe you want to start off with RGB. But CMYK is going to be the version if I want to print this out. For this purpose, I'm going to stick with RGB because I'm not really going to print this thing out. And then I press create. The palettes are found on the right. The tools are always found on the left. The menu bar is always at the top. When you change different tools, the information on this bar towards the top changes with it. In the top right corner, you have your search bar, search for a tool, a tutorial, stock content, workspace. So if I change the workspace, this is the default workspace called Essentials, and it has only the basic things that you need. If I change this to, let's say, photography, it's going to change all the different palettes that they feel are necessary for my photography. Libraries, adjustments, histogram, the navigator, channels, paths, and all these other types of things here. Any palette that you lose or close by accident can always be found in the window menu option. File, save, just like any other application. The preferences about the Photoshop can be found here. Preferences, if you need to change any preferences. Any adjustments, image, adjustments, brightness, hue and saturation, desaturate, black and white, all the adjustments can be found here. Anything that has to do with layers can be found here. If you want to create a new layer, you want to copy a layer, duplicate a layer, all these things about layers, typography, making selections. So all of this information here in the menu bar, just like any other application. So when we look at Photoshop and we want to bring in a specific type of image, what we'll do is we can go to File, Place Embedded. Place linked means that if you place it, it's going to link to the location of where that file is located. Place embedded says, put this picture in and recognize this document as being a self-contained kind of Photoshop document. So I can right click, save image as, save it down to my downloads. Okay. and I will file, place, embed it. So part of the thing here is that this is a portrait document. We have a landscape layout, so when this gets placed in, we need to possibly expand it. And what's going to happen here is that when we expand, we are kind of limited to what we can do in terms of how this fits in the layout. So maybe this is not the best image to have because it doesn't have enough room for us to kind of type out our information. So let's grab another one. I'll just choose this lady. Copy image, back to Photoshop, paste image. If I make a selection, down at the bottom of my layers palette, there is an option called Add Layer Mask. So if I have a selection here, that means this is going to be protected. Everything else will be transparent. So I click on, let me hide that, click on Add Layer Mask, and you see what happens? Because I had that selection, white reveals what I have, black makes everything else transparent. So the same thing will be applied to when I do this with text. So now let me take this right click, I'm right clicking on that mask, delete layer mask. If I were to take this tool, which is the horizontal type mask tool, I just clicked once and then I'm going to increase the type size, let's say 100. Make this bold, okay, and then I don't know, just say her name is Olivia, okay, and her name is Olivia. Let's make this 300. So now I have this active text. It's a selection. So once I commit to that selection, I can't really go back and retype. Now this becomes basically a selection. And so whatever I do with this is what it's going to be, you know, with this kind of information. So when I do this and I go to create layer mask, now there's a mask on top of that type that I'm able to kind of move around. And if I wanted to make it smaller, basically what I'm doing is I'm making this whole layer smaller, right? So I'm moving everything. I'm moving the mask and I'm moving the picture. So this is pretty much like a destructive type of process. Like I can't go back in and retype this information. So what I've done is made a selection, made a mask. That selection is tied to the mask, all right? So let's take this delete layer mask. So the first thing that we're doing is we are selecting, making masks. Now, the second thing that we can do is we're going to do something called a vector mask or a clipping mask. And that deals with shapes. So if I go here and I go to my rectangle tool and I'll do a circle. So I create a circle, right? That circle's there. Even if I want to make more shapes and add them to each other or whatever. But basically I have a shape. The shape is there. Now what I want to do is I want to use this to clip the bottom layer. Meaning anything that's inside this circle will be shown and everything else will be transparent. So what I do is I go to layer. I always use the shortcut. So I'm looking now at the create clipping mask. What happens is this thing clips that. So it looks like I have to do it opposite. Let me do up here. So I do this, layer, create clipping mask. Okay. from underneath it clips the shape. Let's say maybe I make a polygon shape. All right, and I take this polygon shape and put it underneath the picture, and let me take this away. I'm going to delete this. Layer, create clip. So because they're separate layers, I can move this image within this kind of picture box, this window, and I created what's called a clipping mask. So now what I'm able to do with this is I'm able to take the same information and basically say, okay, I'm going to put black over the face, and then I'm going to clip out the text so I can show this through. So let's do that. Let me go back to my history. And when you use your history, this records about 100 steps of what you do. So I can go back in time to where I have only my picture. Now, whatever I do after this point, all the rest of the history goes away. But I can always go back into any of these steps that I created along the way. If you want to find it within a menu, you can go up to Window, and then there's History. The other shortcut to undo is Edit, Undo, Edit, Redo. All right, so I'm going to create my mask here. I'll get the rectangle tool, and I want to make sure this is a shape. So I'm taking this shape and just running it right down the face there. So I can either do it this way, or I can take this and run it down the side here. If I want to extend this, basically I want to transform the scale of this, so I go to Edit, Transform, and then I can extend that piece. Once I'm done with whatever I want to expand, I click on the check mark. Okay? If you don't get all the way to the edge and you want to nudge it just a little bit, you can use your right arrow key, and I can just kind of nudge that over, take away. Okay? Now I have a shape there. And if you want to manipulate shapes, you can always go to your selection, the path selection tool or the direct selection tool. This allows you to select these individual shapes that you can kind of move around and manipulate the points and things like that. So I can always select that, go to my direct selection tool, and I can kind of move points around if I needed to. So if I wanted this to be at an angle, I can take this and I can move that shape. Command Z brings me back. All right, so what I need to do here, I'm gonna move this out, okay? And I'm gonna type in my text. Let me click here and bring down the size. So this is my size. My text is black. I need to make this white. Now, you're the only person on earth who can use your ability. Let me do this. Layer, clipping mask, make, and okay. So what's happening with this is when I clip this, basically what it's doing is it's saying clip the text and use the text for the black, right? So basically I'm clipping the black into the text, but I don't want that. What I want is I want the face, and then I want that face to be clipped using the text. So what I have to do If I want to unclip, I can go to layer, release clipping mask. So I have to do sort of like a trick. And the trick is duplicating the layer and letting the text get clipped of, this is going to block off the regular picture, and then the text will clip the another image, right? So I bring this to the top. I take this. I'm duplicating the layer by dragging it to the new layer icon. I put the text over the image over the text, and then I go to layer, create clipping group, and then you see how that works. So it's a trick of the eye, which says, okay, I have two of these things. This image is getting clipped by the text. This clip is, or this rectangle is on top of the image, and so it looks like each one is pretty much, like in line with the other thing. So because the images are in the exact same place, you get all the information that's there. That's the process of doing what's called a clipping mask. The other process is using selections, and this is called a layer mask. Okay, so those are the two differences between masks in Photoshop. One is called a layer mask, and one is called a clipping mask. Okay? So I'm going to release your screens, and I want you to try this out. So you're going to choose a headshot from pixels.com. You're going to choose a brief saying, a name, or whatever, and then I want you to do two things. Like, you don't even have to do a person. You can do just a regular image of a background or whatever. You can say sunset, and you can grab a sunset. And one, you're going to utilize something with a layer mask, and the other you're going to do with an actual clipping mask with text. Okay? Does anybody want me to go over any part of this that you didn't understand? Okay. All right, let's try it out.